With this second generation NX, Lexus has brought us a strikingly styled premium mid-sized SUV that's unafraid to go its own way when it comes to cars of this kind. It's still one of the only models in the class that can't be ordered in diesel form, offering instead a beautifully refined and highly efficient petrol-electric hybrid powertrain, now available in PHEV Plug-in as well as self-charging forms. If you're choosing in this segment, most of the magazines will tell you to buy something German. But if this revitalised NX appeals, you may well feel that you know better. And you could be right.
Here we are at the beginning of a fresh chapter for the Lexus brand. That's how the company describes this second generation NX, a car that could hardly be more important for this Japanese maker's future fortunes. This model builds on the sales platform established by its predecessor, a car launched back in 2014 that went on to shift over 1 million units, helped by a useful update in 2017, the range eventually becoming the marque's best-selling model, accounting for over a third of all its European sales. Just as importantly, that original NX marked a fresh era for Lexus, as a company confident in its own design direction rather than a premium segment follower. Much then is expected of this second generation model, and much, on the face of things at least, seems to have been delivered here, with over 95% of the parts being completely new. There's a fresh design language, more involving driving dynamics, a vastly improved cabin and much stronger standards of safety. In true Lexus style, it's still hybrid only, of course, but now for the first time with the brand, there's also the option of a frugal plug-in hybrid powertrain, this one borrowed from the Toyota RAV4. Just as significantly, this Mark II design's all-new GAK platform has enabled it to take a slight step up in size. The old NX wasn't quite big enough to take on key segment rivals like Audi's Q5, the BMW X3, the Mercedes GLC, the Jaguar F-Pace and the Volvo XC60. This second-generation version is, but these are tough competitors. Can this rejuvenated NX really compete with them on equal terms? Well, you'll need the industry's most comprehensive review, the car and driving road test, to find out. So, the Lexus driving signature. What on earth is that? Well, it's what this NX now apparently has, in a bid to distinguish this second-generation model's driving experience apart from its predecessor, a car that was about as entertaining as a shopping trolley. The point was, though, that few folk who actually acquired one really cared, and we can't help thinking that the same will be true this time round. Still, let's see what we've got here. It all seems very Lexus-like, and as soon as you're seated, the instrument binnacle screen lights up and an NX side silhouette appears. When the brake pedal is pressed, you hear the hybrid system whirring into life, and switching the vehicle on via the power button activates the centre stat monitor and brings a green ready sign on the instrument screen, accompanied by a pronounced beep, which isn't diluted with engine roar, because there isn't any. Whatever NX you choose, there is an engine. You'd have to choose this model's close cousin, the full electric RZ450e, if you didn't want that. But it doesn't cut in on startup, as it would with all this car's mild hybrid engine segment rivals, or almost instantly after, as used to be the case with the previous generation NX hybrid. So, could this be your ideal transitory initiation to the world of electrified motoring? Time to find out. As you might already be aware, there are two distinct versions of this Lexus this time round, full hybrid or, as in this case, PHEV. Most will want the more affordable full hybrid self-charging 350h version with a powertrain that you can't plug in but which can run fully electrically, independently of the combustion unit for some of the time, a formula still ignored by all this car's most direct crossover rivals. That drive format uses a re-engineered 4th generation hybrid system, retaining the previous 2.5 litre 4-cylinder format, but offering 24% more power, which means 241 bhp beneath your right foot, a good chunk of it from the front axle mounted electric motor. That power hike is actually quite important because the Shift-Matic auto transmission is still of the sort that's reluctant to instantly respond to the urgent stabs of the throttle. These were almost essential in the old car if assertive progress was to be maintained, but feel far less necessary in the 2nd generation 350h because the car shifts along that bit quicker. The extent of that quickness depends a little on whether you've chosen the 350h in front-driven form, in which case 62 miles an hour from rest takes 8.7 seconds, or, as is more likely, you've chosen the E4 all-wheel drive version, in which case the sprint time's reduced to 7.7 seconds. The all-wheel drive version gains its extra acceleration courtesy of the addition of a second electric motor driving the rear axle and producing a further 53 brake horsepower. Either way, the 124 mile an hour top speed applicable to every NX model precludes autobahn burning, which you're not going to be doing in the alternative 450h plug-in NX model we're trying here either, though it does offer a useful slug more power, 305 horsepower in total. Not that this makes the plug-in NX that much faster than its 350h stablemate. Rest to 62 miles an hour is only a fraction quicker, taking 6.3 seconds. That's because this 450h Plus is carrying around the extra weight of a big 18.1 kilowatt-hour battery, which you won't mind because it gives this car an impressively long EV range of up to 47 miles. Unlike with the NX 350h, all-wheel drive is mandatory with the 450h Plus version, which achieves the performance sprint time reading we just quoted only with the assistance of combustion power. If you stay in all-electric drive in an NX 450h Plus, the 0 to 62 mile an hour sprint figure is 10 seconds on the way to a limited maximum of 83 miles an hour. Yes, in this plug-in NX you can choose your preferred method of power delivery. Well, you can after startup anyway. The car always pulls away in battery-only EV mode, one of the 4 different powertrain operational settings available. Pressing this button near the gear stick lets you flip between EV, full electric drive, and the alternative HV mode, the latter being more realistic for normal driving as it runs this Lexus as a regular full hybrid, the software seamlessly blending in either petrol or electric power sources as required. A full press on the same button connects you to a further charge mode, which sees the engine note rise as it rather inefficiently charges the battery when you're driving. All that might sound complicated, but driving an NX 450h Plus really isn't. You don't have to make driving mode choices unless you really want to, because an additional auto, EV or HV mode button is also provided, which essentially makes all the decisions for you. Its choices seem effective too, because that advertised 47-mile electric driving range figure turns out to be not beyond the bounds of achievability, which has been a bit of a revelation for us, having spent the last few years testing PHEVs that regularly undershoot their advertised EV range by 35% or more. And bear in mind that in this segment, with the exception of the Volvo XC60 Recharge, all this NX model's PHEV rivals have EV driving range figures WLTP rated at 10 to 14 miles less. Bottom line, the technology in this plug-in Lexus works, from an efficiency point of view anyway. Where most Toyota Motor Corporation-derived hybrid products tend to struggle, though, is in the way they respond under throttle load, the problem we referenced earlier, which initially is frustrating until you realise that a different driving style is required here. You don't make a hybrid engine go quickly by ramming your right foot to the floor, but by backing off the throttle between ratios in a way that lets the revs drop and the engine bite into its torque curve. Once you understand this, things improve and get better still once you realise that the initially rather dead feel you get when pushing on the accelerator can be mitigated by playing with the drive mode select dial you'll find near the drive system setting buttons we just referenced. Eco, normal and sport mode options are offered, which tweak steering and throttle feel along with gear change response. With the sport mode activated, which sees the speedometer switch itself into a red tinged glow, the 2.5 litre VVTi engine gathers itself together with a bit more enthusiasm, chipping in with a rather un-Lexus-like urgent thrum. You can't raise your hopes too high in this regard, of course. As usual with full hybrids, mid-range torque is pretty terrible, even on this 450h Plus variant. Overtakes have to be planned with care because there's much less pulling power than you get from a comparable 2-litre diesel, which is why the 1,500 kilo braked towing capacity figure that applies to both versions of this car is substantially less. And on this 450h Plus model, you'll really feel the extra 180 kilos weight of all the PHEV mechanicals in terms of body roll if you start to push on a bit too hard through tighter bends. But hey, look at what this car can give you, the incredible ability to virtually ignore petrol stations for all but longer journeys, so give it a break. In any case, whichever kind of NX you prefer, full hybrid or PHEV, there's actually now quite a bit to like here, once you learn to drive this car the way it was designed to be driven. This second generation model has, as we said earlier, been engineered to deliver what the brand calls its Lexus driving signature, a supposedly ideal combination of comfort and handling dynamics apparently honed by professional racing drivers. And again, you shouldn't get your hopes up too high here. This is still no Alfa Romeo Stelvio, BMW X3 or Jaguar F-Pace. But the NX now at last matches the dynamic standards set by brands like Mercedes, Volvo and Audi in this segment, which is a real step forward. The reasons why lie with 30% more body rigidity from this Mark II model's newly acquired GAK chassis, plus 20% faster steering responses, a 20mm lower centre of gravity, better weight balance and increased track width at each end. There's also a fresh suspension design, which as before can be had with AVS or adaptive variable suspension, adaptive damping if you opt for an F-Sport model. We haven't got AVS here and haven't really felt the need for it. The standard setup delivering supple damping that copes reasonably with porous surfaces and school-run speed humps, but can sometimes feel a little over-firm on nastier potholes and ruts. What else? Well, the re-engineered electronically controlled braking system now delivers significantly more pedal feel. You get shift paddles behind the steering wheel which deliver engine braking force in 6 steps. And highway cruising speeds are as refined as you'd hope from a hybrid, helped in this 450h Plus model by the fact that there's less noise from the hybrid engine as it can run at lower revs compared to the self-charging 350h variant. Noise and vibration are also suppressed by plenty of insulation in the wing linings and front pillars, and the use of acoustic glass for the windscreen and front side windows. We usually finish any review of a mid to larger size SUV with a quick summary of off-road ability. Very quick in most cases. Soft-roaders of this sort aren't of course intended for the Serengeti, and the modest 185mm ground clearance of this one means you'd be very unwise to venture anywhere too arduous with it. To be fair though, on ground that's fairly even, the electronic E4 system that most will specify on this NX performs reasonably, partly because when necessary it's able to direct more torque to the rear wheels than many mechanical 4x4 systems deliver. That really helps when pulling away on loose, slippery surfaces, at which point the E4 system automatically distributes torque according to the tractional needs at each axle, with a front-to-rear split that can vary from 100% at the front and 0 at the back, to up to 20% front and 80% back, depending on conditions. Equally important is the inclusion, for the first time on a Lexus, of an automatic limited slip differential control called a trail mode and selected via this little tree designated button between the seats. It deals with an important issue that afflicts some less capable four-wheel drive crossovers, cars that run the risk of getting stranded if a driven wheel loses contact with the ground on very uneven terrain. Should this happen when trail mode is activated, the free rotating wheel will be braked while drive torque is directed to the grounded wheel. At the same time, throttle control and the transmission shift pattern will be adapted to help keep the vehicle moving. That's all very reassuring should you end up with this Lexus in a slippery car park or on somebody's snowy driveway. But despite its name, you'd be very unwise to put the trail system to the test on really gnarly surfaces or on a steep slope where you'd slither hairily down because this car doesn't get any kind of hill descent control system. None of this will be of much interest to a typical NX customers who will be keener to be briefed on the fact that this car now gets an even more complete complement of the brand's latest Lexus Safety System Plus camera-driven drive and safety features. The pre-collision autonomous braking setup is one of those that works at night when the majority of accidents happen. Plus, there's an enhanced dynamic radar cruise control system offering an element of semi-autonomous drive assistance for the kind of highway environment where this car feels most at home, as both engine and electrification combine for efficient progress. At which point you might be excused a smug smile of satisfaction as you cruise alongside these smoky diesel-powered mid-sized SUVs you could have bought for much the same sort of money. Hybrid tech might have a limited lifespan in all our motoring futures, but right here, right now, especially in this car, it really does seem to make an awful lot of sense. It's probably safe to say that the shape of this second generation NX will have wider appeal than its more individualistic predecessor. Whether that's a good thing is a matter of debate. The old car really stood out in a sea of crossover conformity. Here, well, not quite so much, though it certainly looks a pricier, slightly larger and more mature proposition. And of course, Lexus likes it, pronouncing this evolution of its original L finesse design language a thing of functional beauty. If you're familiar with the older NX, the main thing you'll notice wherever you look on this car is that it's altogether less angular. The earlier model's lower panel styling, for instance, replaced by this smoother concave shaping. We just touched upon the visual perception of extra size. The increases aren't actually quite as great as they might first appear. 20mm of extra length and 5mm more height. The larger wheels, of course, contribute to that illusion, 18 to 20-inch rims now featuring, and around the rear arch where there's a really neat little aero spat. You'll note this Mark II model's short overhangs and powerful haunches. The front looks significantly more prestigious. The hallmark Lexus spindle grille, now frameless, more upright and more integral to the design. Its intricate mesh pattern made up of three-dimensional U-shaped blocks. It's flanked on higher grade variants by these 4 projector LED headlights, each unit incorporating 11 LED chips with light output controlled by a forward camera. Tick-shaped daytime running lights sit above each headlamp, each fading out when the indicators are used. And further down, L-shaped corner cutouts house small fog lamps. Where this second generation NX looks really different this time round, though, is at the rear, distinguished by smarter L-shaped LED lamp clusters and the signature blade-style full-width lighting, as first introduced on the smaller UX, and here emphasising this Mark II model's 20mm width increase and wider tracks. Plus, on the tailgate, the Lexus emblem has been replaced with spaced Lexus lettering. There's a shark fin antenna, a subtle roof spoiler, slim lower reflectors and narrow vertical corner slots which don't seem to serve any useful purpose.
As usual, though, what's more important is what you can't see. This second-generation design's fresh GAK Global Architecture K platform which makes possible the change in size and drive dynamics embodied in this evolved model's Vital X Tech design concept. That chassis, together with virtually all this car's engineering, is shared with Toyota's SUV in this class, the RAV4, but there'll be virtually no cross-shopping between those two models. This NX is certainly a classier piece of design, and if you like it, you'll think this shape to be worth a long, lingering glance every time you walk away for the night. All this being the case, it would have been particularly disappointing if, on the inside, Lexus had served up something more conventional. Fortunately, they haven't done. Signs of what Lexus calls its omotenashi hospitality begin as you approach and open the vehicle. The door handles, puddle lamps and daytime running lamps illuminate. And then opening the door lights up the instrument panel. Part of a dash design that now wraps itself around the driver, creating more of an immersive feel. Everything you're surrounded with feels deliberately modern and pretty high-end, all of it evidence of Lexus's growing confidence as a car maker. If the model you've chosen has been fitted out with this huge 14-inch Lexus Link Pro centre screen, that'll rather dominate your first impressions. It flows into a digital instrument binnacle you view through this lovely Takumi crafted 3-spoke wheel, now adorned on plusher models with touch-sensitive tracer switches. Surrounding it all, there's lovely stitched leather, soft touch panels that kiss together, and supportive seats with a special deep hung construction that sits the upholstery seams deeper into the structure, helping the occupant maintain a better posture. Almost everything's different compared to the previous model, and not all of the changes are for the better. The flimsy, narrow silver plastic door handle catches are fiddly to use. The shiny fascia surfaces quickly attract smears, dust and hairs, and the NX has lost the lovely analogue clock that was bejewelled in the centre stack of this car's predecessor. There isn't really a centre stack this time round, which means that many of the climate controls have been inhaled by the centre screen with vents crammed in underneath. On the plus side, you do at least get proper chunky dials for temperature control, and you can't deny that there's less of a cluttered feel this time around, mainly because the number of switches has been reduced from 78 to 45, with the remaining ones grouped in defined zones according to their function, activated by smart buttons that properly click and clack. Everything seems to fall more neatly to hand too, with exemplary ergonomics you'll appreciate, without really understanding the detailed thought that's gone into creating them. Endless global data gathering of people's ideal shoulder to fingertip distance, and details like an 84mm length increase for the central armrest, so that it's a more comfortable place to rest your elbow. The gear shift lever, now designed like the one in the Lexus LC sports car, is easier to use too, even though it's now smaller. There's a climate concierge system with S-Flow control, which recognises which seats are occupied, directing heating or cooling performance accordingly, taking into account ambient temperature and even the effect of sunlight through the windows. And plusher versions like this one get classy grained door card inlays and an ambient cabin lighting setup with 64 colours, 14 of them predefined to reflect different moods inspired by nature. Some cabin functions trigger a musical sound, the seatbelt reminders and the clearance sonars, for instance, the tone of which was apparently curated by Japanese jazz musician Jiro Yoshida. But as we suggested earlier, it's the screens that dominate this vastly improved era of NX interior design. Depending on trim, there's a choice of two: the 9.8-inch VGA Lexus Link Connect setup used by cheaper variants, or preferably this 14-inch HD Lexus Link Pro monitor, the one we referenced earlier. Both are cloud-based with over-the-air updates, and both respond more quickly than before. This Pro setup, for instance, is 3.6 times faster than the previous generation package, and they're certainly easier to use. Listening to the many moans about the fiddly remote touch interface trackpad that used to operate the central monitor, Lexus has dispensed with that here. but unfortunately not replaced it with anything. So operation of this central display must be done with either finger jabs towards tiny screen icons or use of the voice control system. It's fortunate then that the latter's been much improved with what Lexus calls dynamic voice recognition, which recognises which seat the command has come from and responds accordingly. For example, opening the nearest window. It's more intuitive too. If you tell it you're hungry, it will bring up a list of nearby restaurants. Or whatever you want, just preface your command with, "Hey Lexus."
What do you want to do?
It's not immediately obvious at first glance how to surf around the various functions on this screen until closer inspection reveals that there's no homepage, just a slim list of tiny shortcut functions along the monitor's right-hand frame for navigation, music, phone functions and vehicle features, plus a web browser and a settings section. Most of what you'll regularly want to access lies in the vehicle section, which is where you go to view an energy flow monitor, plus, if appropriate to the NX you've chosen, screens which show all-wheel drive activation and allow you to set charging times for this plug-in model. Lexus has at last ditched its old Miracast smartphone mirroring system, which only worked with Android phones, in favour of one which incorporates both Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, though unfortunately only the latter can be served with a wireless connection. Enough on that. What about the equally detailed instrument display? Well, for the full effect here, on an affordable model, you'd ideally want to put aside some extra budget to make sure your NX is specified with the Tazuna cockpit package that's standard on top variants like this one. This gets you a sharper set of HD gauges on the 7-inch binnacle screen, which change in colour with drive mode, plus a 10-inch head-up display that's customisable using these touch tracer switches on the steering wheel spokes, the left one for audio features, the right one for driving functions. Initially, the tracer pads seem fiddly to use, but you soon adjust, the pad functions changing not only what you view via the head-up projection, but also what you see on the binnacle screen. Choose between an energy flow monitor, audio settings, navigation arrows, a G-force meter, driving support camera features, a fuel and power consumption meter, and a readout with average speed and elapsed time. The screen isn't big enough to show the full width mapping you'd get from rival models in this class, but the display is neatly presented with its single central dial, flanked by crescent-shaped battery charge and fuel readouts. That central gauge switches from being a power meter to a rev counter when you activate the car's sport drive setting. What about practicalities? Seeing out, for instance. Well, the thick windscreen A-pillars can sometimes get in the way at junctions, and the view at the rear isn't perfect, though the D-pillar quarter-light windows alleviate some of the blind spot there, and it helps that all-round parking sensors are standard across the range, as is a reversing camera upgraded on top models to the excellent 360-degree panoramic view monitor we have here. Takumi spec gets you a digital rear view mirror too. Build quality from the Japanese factory seems pretty faultless, and there are various colourful upholstery choices as an alternative to the unrelenting black finish offered by most rivals. As for cabin storage, well, there are some neat touches like this wireless charging panel in front of the gear stick, which you can retract into the dash with your phone upon it. This opening up a lower cubby with the useful USB-A port most rivals lack, plus a USB-C point. There's a deep box between the seats with silver-framed cup holders just in front of it, plus the glove box and the door pockets are of a decent size, and there are ticket slots on the facing side of the sun visors. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, all the doors activate with the brand's latest e-latch electronic release system. With this, the handle's fixed, unlatching instead, activated by a little switch on its inner surface. Lexus claims that this allows the door to be opened with a smooth, simple and near-silent motion, inspired by the traditional shoji sliding room dividers in Japanese homes. The opening process doesn't seem much different to us, But we do approve of the way that the e-latch system allows installation of a safe exit assist setup that prevents you from opening the door in the face of oncoming pedestrians or traffic. Backseat passenger room hasn't been much enhanced by this second generation model's slight increase in body length, but it's still reasonably competitive against the slightly larger premium rivals that Lexus now wants this Mark II NX to compete with. Audi's Q5, for instance, which feels a fraction smaller than this at the rear. That Q5 seat-based sliding function is missing here, but you can recline the seat backs. There's not a great deal of cabin width, but what you do get is embellished by the fact that the NX does without the kind of high centre transmission tunnel that features on most of its rivals. So, though the centre part of this rear bench isn't very comfortable, it is easier to transport 3 adults in this car than would normally be the case with models in this segment. Headroom's not bad either, though it can be compromised a little if you opt for a model fitted with a panoramic glass roof. If you haven't specified that, you'll be glad of these rear quarter-light windows, which prevent it from being too dark and dismal back here. A centre armrest features twin cup holders, the seat backs have deep pockets, the doors have proper bottle holders, and you get these 2 centre vents with twin USB-C ports and a 12-volt socket nearby. There are twin overhead reading lights, coat hooks in the overhead grab handles, and most models get rear heated seats. And as at the front, everything's beautifully put together, especially in this top variant, which features these classy Sumi black wood inlays. We'll finish with a look out back. Now, every NX gets a powered tailgate. Top models also fit it with a kick sensor too, and it no longer operates with arthritic slowness thanks to a new low-speed, high-torque, spindle-type electric motor which has halved the operation time to about 4 seconds. You can set the opening height to a preferred level, say to avoid hitting a low garage ceiling, for instance. Once everything's open, a 545-litre load space is revealed, 70 litres more than the previous generation model, thanks to a cargo area 40mm longer. Impressively, this plug-in version isn't compromised at all in this regard, unlike most of its segment rivals. You'd get 60 litres less if you chose a PHEV Jaguar F-Pace, 90 litres less if you went for a PHEV Audi Q5, and 95 litres less if you decided upon a PHEV BMW X3. Access is over this impractical brushed metal loading sill which will quickly scratch, and there's a cargo-based deck board which divides 3 ways for different arrangements of the loading area. Beneath it, even in this plug-in model, there's quite a lot of space to store extra stuff you won't want cluttering up the main boot. A compartment big enough for both charging leads, for example. That main area can take up to 3 golf bags or 2 large suitcases, 77 and 63 litres in size. And if your luggage happens to be bulky, but you still have to take rear seat passengers, the reclining seat backs can be made a little more vertical, which might be just enough to allow you to get everything in. There's a netted area to the left, pull-out bag hooks on both sides, 4 silver tie-down points and 2 restraining hooks, one either side of the hatch aperture. Disappointingly though, unlike nearly all its rivals, Lexus provides neither a ski hatch or a flexible 40-20-40 rear seatback split. So, if you've rear passengers, longer items like skis will have to go on the roof. When you push everything forward, for some reason, the seat's folded capacity is 84 litres less than before, and it still isn't quite flat. Still, the 1,436 litre capacity will be sufficient for most owners. Let's get to the pricing of this car. We'll quote you figures as they were from launch in early 2022. Now, as you'd expect from Lexus, there are no conventional engines, no mild hybrids, and no diesels on offer. Just a full hybrid 350h powertrain and the more powerful plug-in hybrid 450h Plus version that we're trying here. There's no full electric NX variant, and there doesn't need to be, because the brand's RZ450e EV model fills that niche and is very closely related to this car. We mentioned pricing, so let's start with what you'll pay for an NX with the brand's full hybrid 350h powertrain. The sticker figures there start at around the £40,000 mark, which is pretty much what you'd expect for a car in this class, except that most cars in the mid-sized SUV segment that this Lexus now wants to compete in, amongst Audi Q5s and BMW X3s, have four-wheel drive as standard. The starting figure we just quoted you is for a base-trimmed front-driven model. It's £1,000 more for a 350h derivative with the brand's E4 four-wheel drive system. Almost nobody's going to be choosing this car in base NX spec, though at the very least you'll be embellishing it with the brand's premium pack at £1,000 more, onto which various key extras can be bolted, like NX premium pack models are expected to account for up to 40% of UK sales. On E4 350h variants, there's also a plusher premium plus pack option with base NX trim, with enough luxury kit to satisfy almost anyone, though by that point, for an NX 300h equipped to that level, you'd be knocking on the door of £50,000. If you're happy going above that price point and stretching up to the two very top variants, then there are various F-Sport models priced from £50,000 and top Takumi spec priced from around £55,000. But maybe you'd like a little bit more power and EV driving range from your NX. So if so, you'll prefer the plug-in 450h Plus version of this car that we're trying here, for which you'll need to allow another £9,000 in your budget. And think in terms of that outlay, starting from at least around £51,000, because for a 450h Plus, you have to have E4 four-wheel drive system, and you can't have the least expensive version of the NX trim package. That means NX 450h Plus customers will be choosing between Premium Pack and Premium Plus Pack versions of NX spec in the £51,000 to £57,000 bracket, or plusher F-Sport and Takumi variants in the £58,000 to £61,000 bracket. It's a Takumi 450h Plus model we have here. Have you got all that? Good. Right, let's give you some value perspective on those figures, starting with where this car fits in the Lexus lineup. For an NX 350h, think around £10,000 above the company's smaller, less powerful UX hybrid, which seems about right. By the time, though, that you've stretched up into the upper realms of the NX 450h Plus lineup, with a variant like the one we have here, you'll be getting close to the kind of money you'd pay for base versions of the brand's large sector crossover, the RX, which is a V6 hybrid. The Japanese maker hopes, though, that if you're considering this car, it won't be as an alternative to another Lexus. The company's always used the NX as a key weapon for attracting conquest customers. So how will it stack up on price against segment competitors from other brands? Well, not many customers here will be considering this car as an alternative to a Toyota, but it's worth pointing out that very similar engineering to what's on offer here can be had with a Toyota RAV4. The self-charging full hybrid version of that model costs around £6,000 less than an NX 350h, but isn't quite a perfect engineering match because it offers less power. A RAV4 plug-in, though, has exactly the same all-wheel drive PHEV powertrain as this NX 450h Plus and offers it for around £8,000 less. Suzuki's A-Cross is a rebadged version of better-equipped RAV4 plug-in variants and costs around £4,000 less than an NX 450h Plus. As for options outside the Toyota Corporation, well, there aren't many direct ones if you're looking at an NX 350h. Well, actually, there aren't any if, as Lexus wants, you consider this car as competing only against larger premium badge mid-sized SUVs like BMW's X3, Audi's Q5, the Mercedes GLC, Jaguar's F-Pace and Volvo's XC60. All of those cars come only in their most affordable forms with mild hybrid, not proper full hybrid petrol engines. But they're still priced in the same £45,000 to £60,000 bracket as most versions of the NX350h. You might also be looking at pricier versions of the Range Rover Evoque, but that's a slightly smaller car, which in petrol form, if you don't want a PHEV, offers no electrification whatsoever, and in any case, wouldn't save you much if matched in power and spec against an NX. Before we go on to talk about plug-in hybrids, we should obviously point out that full hybrid technology isn't exclusive to Toyota Motor Group brands in this part of the SUV market. It's just that the cars that use it are slightly different from this one. A spend somewhere in the £30,000 to £35,000 bracket would get you full hybrid versions of models like Honda's HR-V, Nissan's Qashqai, Jeep's Compass, Ford's Kuga, Hyundai's Tucson and Kia's Sportage. But those are all mainstream brands and in some cases slightly smaller cars. It's also worth pointing out that the same money that Lexus is asking here would alternatively get you full hybrid versions of two family SUVs bigger than an NX, the Hyundai Santa Fe and the Kia Sorento. But those are 7-seaters, and again, there's that badge equity issue. Right, let's switch to this NX450H Plus plug-in hybrid model, which has a much wider cross-section of established rivals, mainly because the models we mentioned earlier, as Lexus's target rivals, BMW's X3, Audi's Q5, the Mercedes GLC, Jaguar's F-Pace and Volvo's XC60 are all now well established in their PHEV forms. The NX450H Plus costs around the same as plug-in versions of the X3, the Q5 and the GLC. The XC60 and the F-Pace cost a little more in their PHEV forms because they're both a bit more powerful. Again, if you're interested in this NX450H Plus plug-in and looking at rivals, make sure you're comparing like with like. Nearly every mainstream brand with a mid-sized SUV will offer you a plug-in option these days. But apart from the badge equity issue, those are usually slightly smaller cars. And in some cases, they only come in front-driven form. An all-wheel drive, mid-sized, mainstream branded SUV with plug-in tech and all-wheel drive, for instance, plug-in versions of the Kia Sportage, the Hyundai Tucson and the top Peugeot 3008 hybrid will typically save you around £10,000 over this NX450H Plus once you take spec into account. Right, enough with rivals. Let's assume you've decided that it is an NX of some sort that you really want. So just how generous has Lexus been with specification this time round? Well, let's take a look at that now and start with what you'd get if you chose the least expensive front-driven NX model without any equipment additions. Well, there'd still be a fair bit included. 18-inch alloy wheels, bi-LED headlights with automatic high beam, LED front fog lights, power folding mirrors, roof rails, a powered tailgate, the e-latch electronic door opening system, and a very complete portfolio of Lexus Safety System Plus camera safety kit, which we'll brief you on in a few moments. Inside, with a standard base NX model, you'd get Tahara synthetic leather upholstery, powered steering adjustment, a 4-setting drive mode select system, dual zone climate control and heated front seats. Plus, a 9.8-inch Lexus Link Connect centre infotainment screen with cloud-based navigation, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring, and a 10-speaker DAB premium sound system. Across the range, owners can also use the provided Lexus Link app on their smartphone. The connected services offered with that include locking and unlocking the vehicle, opening the tailgate, operating the steering wheel and seat heaters, and adjusting the climate control to heat or cool the vehicle ahead of setting out on a journey. The car's hazard lights can also be remotely illuminated, for example, to help spot the car in a busy car park. These things are in addition to established Lexus Link services such as driving analytics, hybrid coaching and fuel level monitoring. Additional Lexus Link functions available for the NX450h Plus include monitoring of battery charge level, charge scheduling and a charging timer. So, that's covered off the kit list for an unadorned version of this model, but poverty spec NXs of that kind will of course be very rare indeed. Ideally, you're going to want to add either the premium pack at £1,000 more over base trim, or with the E4 four-wheel drive version, the premium plus pack around £8,000 more. The premium pack might actually be all you need. This gets you rear privacy glass, keyless smart entry, ambient cabin lighting, a heated steering wheel, a wireless charger, 8-way powered front adjustment and 2-way power lumbar support on driver's seats, plus a cornering function for the front fog lamps and some extra camera safety features. With the premium pack, the NX450h Plus gains 8-way adjustable powered front seats too. Inside with the Premium Plus pack, you get real leather upholstery, heated and ventilated front seats, a head-up display, panoramic view monitor, ambient cabin lighting with 64 colours, and the Tazuna cockpit package with its touch tracer steering wheel switches. With the 350h model, this pack gives you 8-way adjustable powered front seats, while the 450h Plus variant gains heated rear seats. With both the engines, perhaps the most important Premium Plus pack feature is the bigger Lexus Link Pro 14-inch multimedia centre screen that makes the cabin feel more sophisticated. Across the range with base NX spec, there are various other Premium and Premium Plus pack permutations too complicated to cover here. Perhaps the sweet spot would be to choose the version of the more affordable Premium pack that also gives you powered seats and that larger 14-inch Lexus Link Pro central screen. Let's finish our review of standard spec by covering what you get with the two top trim levels, as usual with Lexus badged F Sport and Takumi. F Sport spec gets a more distinct driving feel thanks to the addition of adaptive variable suspension and front and rear lateral performance dampers. And there's a more distinct look with F Sport trim thanks to unique 20-inch alloy wheels and dedicated exterior design features including a piano black grille, black roof rails and F Sport badging. The cabin features an F Sport steering wheel, aluminium pedals and sports front seats. Plus, there's that larger 14-inch Lexus Link Pro multimedia centre screen, a kick sensor for the tailgate, touch tracer switches on the steering wheel, a humidity sensor and an extra fifth drive mode select setting. That only leaves the top Takumi spec we have here. This flagship trim level has its own 20-inch wheel design, remote and automatic parking functions, a sunroof, a card key, a digital rear view mirror and a thumping Mark Levinson 17-speaker premium surround audio system. If budget isn't an issue and you like the sound of those Takumi features but prefer the sportier look and drive experience of F Sport trim, you can combine the two with an F Sport Takumi pack model. Across the range, as long as you avoid the very base level of trim, a big glass panoramic roof will be offered at extra cost. With top Takumi spec, it's a no-cost option to the ordinary sunroof we've got on this test car. As for options, well, there aren't too many. The two top trim levels don't really need much, and with the lower order NX models, Lexus prefers that customers should instead opt for the two packs we mentioned. Bear in mind that you're almost certainly going to be paying more for your choice of colour. The only two standard ones are solid velvet black or Fuji red. Other than that, You choose from a range of metallic or special metallic shades. We've got special metallic Sonic Grey here. As for the interior, well, there are various no-cost option cabin colour and trim packages, which vary according to model spec. On pricier models, you might also want to pay extra for 20-inch anthracite machined wheels too. Choose an NX with Premium Pack or Premium Plus Pack spec, and 2 aesthetic packs are available. There's the Style Pack, which gives you silver front and rear skirts and side steps, or there's the Design Pack, which gives you front, side and rear chrome garnishes. All models can also be had with a tow bar. The 450h Plus can be had with a special bag for its power cables, and across the range you can add illuminated scuff plates and a protection pack, which gives you rubber floor mats, a boot liner, mud guards and rear bumper protection film. Let's finish, as we always do, with a detailed look at safety. Now, this second generation NX was the first of the brand's models to feature the third generation Lexus Safety System Plus package, equipping it with a comprehensive array of active safety and driver assistance features. At first glance, it doesn't look a lot different to the package supplied with final versions of the previous generation model, but actually quite a lot's been done here in terms of upgrades and extra features, made possible by enhancement of the detection range of the car's millimetre wave radar and camera. Let's start with the autonomous braking setup. Lexus calls it PCS, or its pre-collision system. And with this, capabilities have been extended so that it can now detect motorcycles and pedestrians in the car's path. That setup additionally gains a new function that identifies high collision risks with oncoming traffic or crossing pedestrians and cyclists when making a turn at an intersection. Also now incorporated into PCS is an emergency steering assist function, which provides assistance triggered by the driver's use of the wheel to automatically control steering when there's a high risk of a collision, helping to keep the vehicle stable and within its traffic lane. Plus, a neat acceleration suppression function has been added into the setup, which helps prevent unintended sharp acceleration when travelling at low speed. These various improvements should, Lexus reckons, enable the PCS system to detect up to 36% more accident risk scenarios than before. We wouldn't doubt it. Apart from autonomous braking, the other thing you can expect on a modern family car is a lane-keeping system. This Lexus has 2 LDA, or lane departure alert, to warn you if you're drifting out of lane, and lane trace assist to keep you centred in your lane. Both setups have been further refined for this Mark II NX model, with LDA made more intuitive so that it can deactivate warning and restraint functions when it's judged that the driver's making a deliberate manoeuvre to avoid a person or parked vehicle. The system can also now recognise some solid objects, such as curbs, guardrails, walls and utility poles, giving more natural lane tracing performance. The Lane Trace Assist, meanwhile, has enhanced recognition performance, giving smoother and less abrupt steering support. For example, when overtaking a vehicle in an adjacent lane, or when driving close to a roadside structure, the tracing position is offset from the centre of the road to the avoidance side, again following a driver's natural instinct. The other main camera safety area Lexus has worked on for this second generation NX is its DRCC, or Dynamic Radar Cruise Control System, now improved so that it can more quickly recognise and adjust to traffic cutting in front of your NX. Working in conjunction with Lane Trace Assist, it will allow a more natural line through bends and decelerate earlier in accordance with the sharpness of the curve. A new indicator-linked pre-acceleration function automatically accelerates the car up to its target speed to shorten the distance to the vehicle ahead in preparation for a changing lane to overtake. And similarly, the system will slow the NX when the indicator is used
to move into a lane behind a slower vehicle, giving a more natural feel to the driving assistance. All good. And if, like us, you really hate people undertaking on the highway, well, this car won't do it, because it features Lexus's first overtake prevent function, which will automatically reduce cruising speed to avoid undertaking vehicles in the adjacent lane. The system works in conjunction with another standard Lexus Safety System Plus feature, RSA, or Road Sign Assist, which has been expanded to respond to more signs and commands, these now including warning and stop signs. When RSA recognises a change in the speed limit, the system alerts the driver to adjust the car's cruising speed accordingly. What else? Well, you'd hope for a blind spot monitor in a car of this price, the kind of thing that would alert you if you were about to dangerously pull out in front of another vehicle. Well, provided you avoid the base version of NX trim without any optional packs, your NX will have this. A setup neatly linked into the car's all-new Safe Exit Assist feature. That's been made possible by the new e-latch electronic entry and exit system built into the doors. If the blind spot monitor detects traffic approaching from the rear and an attempt is made to open any door, the unlatching will be cancelled until the danger's passed. Lexus believes this innovative system can help prevent 95% of the accidents caused by door opening. The blind spot monitor system also incorporates rear cross traffic alert, which will warn you of approaching traffic when you're reversing out of a space, and if necessary, brake the car to avoid a collision. As for more conventional passive safety kit fitted across the range, well, pretty much everything you'd expect is present and correct. So, tick off a pedestrian-friendly bonnet, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, an emergency brake signal for panic stops, and no fewer than 9 airbags, all linked to an e-call system that'll automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location in the event of any bag being activated in a collision. As well as the usual twin front, side and curtain bags, Lexus has provided a driver's knee bag and, more unusually, a front passenger cushion airbag. Plus, new for this Mark II model, a front centre airbag. As a result, the experts at Euro NCAP awarded this NX a top 5-star rating for both in-car and pedestrian safety. In the 2 key elements of the test programme, this Lexus scored 81% for adult occupant safety and 87% for child passenger protection. What else? Well, across the range, you'll also find a tyre pressure monitoring system and hill start assist control to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. In addition, there are all the usual electronic driving aids for braking, traction and stability, systems that in most other cars will only activate at the last minute if the situation demands it. In an NX, though, it's all done a bit more cleverly, the so-called Lexus Vehicle Dynamics Integration Management setup, coordinating everything together and taking action to correct the car just that little bit earlier. At the top of the NX range with this Takumi flagship trim grade and with an F-Sport model equipped with the extra cost Takumi pack, Lexus also includes an extended safety package. This introduces LCA or lane change assistance, which provides automatic lane change steering. Just activate the indicator when you want to change lanes on the highway, and the car moves into the other lane automatically, provided that its camera system deems that it's safe to do so. Neat. The extended safety package also adds front cross traffic alert, which uses radar monitoring to detect and warn the driver of traffic approaching from either side when emerging from a junction at low speed. An animation of the direction of the approaching vehicle is shown in the colour head-up display, and if the system judges the driver is about to pull out, it will prompt them to slow down with a warning display and buzzer. It's all very reassuring. Lexus executives must have been rubbing their hands over the past few years as the media backlash against diesel power got into full swing.
This being the same media that 2 decades ago told us to fuel from the black pump because we'd put out lower levels of CO2. It's a bit like when the world discovered that tobacco was bad for you back in the late 70s. At the time, there were plenty of naysayers playing down the medical findings, and it took society quite a time to get even close to kicking the habit, as will undoubtedly be the case when it comes to our dependency on diesel power. But if you have kicked that habit and happen to be in the market for a premium mid-sized SUV, then this NX model's hybrid focus may well charm you and your accountant. Improvements made to the NX 350h model's 4th generation self-charging hybrid system have enabled CO2 emissions to drop by about 10% compared to the Mark I NX model, and as a result, the NX 350h E4 self-charging full hybrid variant that most will choose manages up to 47 mpg on the combined cycle and attracts a 32 to 34% rating because of its relatively clean CO2 reading, rated at 130 to 146 grams per kilometre. All of which means quite a tax saving over the equivalent mild hybrid models that premium rivals offer in this segment. You'll need some perspective here. Let's use directly comparable Volvo XC60 mild hybrid all-wheel drive models to give you that. In B4 diesel form, that Swedish model can't match an NX 300h E4 model's fuel figure. That black pump fueled XC60's combined best is 44.1 mpg. And that Volvo is BIK rated up at 37%, like most of its German rivals in this sector. As is the XC60 in mild hybrid B5 petrol form, in which, guys, that Volvo can only record a rather thirsty combined best of 35.7 mpg. Quite a difference over an NX 350h. If you decide you don't actually need four-wheel drive with this Lexus and go for a front-driven NX 350h, then of course you'll do even better. That more affordable 350h variant is rated at 129 to 133 grams per kilometre, so qualifies for a rate at 30%, plus it manages up to 49.5 mpg on the combined cycle. Work out the advantages these better bandings and economy figures will give you over rivals, and you'll find the savings will really add up. If you're not familiar with the differences between mild hybrid engines and the full hybrid power plant used by an NX 350h, well, it's quite simple. With a mild hybrid unit, the car can never run solely on all-electric drive. The full hybrid system, in contrast, allows the electric motor to sometimes operate independently of the petrol engine. Thanks to this, the car is often able to revert into an all-electric drive format, and you can even force your NX to operate that way by pressing the EV button provided near the gear stick. The EV function is only available for just over a mile though, and it won't work at all if you exceed 30 miles an hour or if for some reason the batteries aren't charged up. To begin with, you may find these limitations somewhat frustrating, but in practice, when the drivetrain's being used normally, this Lexus uses its EV allocation only in very small chunks, between which the battery resource is constantly being replenished by brake energy regeneration. As a result, when you're in built-up areas and stop-start traffic, you'll find that once the car's properly warmed up, the engine will nearly always be ready to function in silent, all-electric milk float mode. For real efficiency savings though, you'll need to get yourself the version of this NX that you can plug in, the 450h Plus variant we're trying here. This derivative has a whole clutch of sector rivals who, at first glance, seem to use much the same engine technology, so you might not expect the same kind of efficiency advantage in segment that the more affordable 350h model enjoys. Well, yes and no. The NX 450h Plus actually manages efficiency figures that are class-leading, specifically an all-electric range of up to 47 miles that facilitates a 313.8 mpg combined cycle fuel figure, a CO2 reading of up to 21 grams per kilometre, and a BIK tax rating of just 8%. The Volvo XC60 Recharge T6 delivers a similar EV range, so gets close to those readings, 282.1 mpg, 23 grams per kilometre, and the same 8% BIK rating. But it's £5,000 more to buy. Other plug-in rivals in this segment, though, can't get near to this Lexus model showing. PHEV versions of the Audi Q5, the BMW X3 and the Jaguar F-Pace run out of EV charge 10 to 14 miles sooner than an NX 450h Plus, so can't crack the 200 mpg barrier or get anywhere close to even the 30 gram-kilometre of CO2 mark. As a result, they're much pricier to tax, sitting in the 11 to 14% bracket. As with every plug-in hybrid, the fuel economy figures we've just quoted bear absolutely no relation to what you're likely to achieve in the real world. Think more like 50 to 60 mpg if you use this car properly, regularly charging it. If you don't, you'll merely be driving around a 2-ton petrol-powered 4x4 SUV, which won't be a very efficient form of motoring at all. Whichever kind of NX you decide upon, at higher speeds, you'll need to bear in mind that the quoted fuel figures are even more heavily dependent than normal on the driver assuming a significant degree of restraint. Certainly for noteworthy levels of frugality in day-to-day use with this Lexus, you'll need to keep the powertrain operating setting in EV mode as often as possible, and frequently twist the drive mode select dial near the gear stick into its left-hand eco mode, which moderates throttle response and engine power output while tweaking the climate control. Plus, you'll also need to keep a very careful eye on the hybrid system indicator on the left-hand side of the instrument binnacle, making sure that the needle stays as often as possible in the light blue eco zone. You can monitor the hybrid system's cleverness on the energy flow display you'll find on the instrument binnacle screen, and more colourfully on the centre console monitor. There's a selectable fuel and power consumption eco-meter gauge in the instrument cluster that also shows your average mile per kilowatt hour energy usage. And the centre dash display also provides graphical trip info, current and history screens so you can gauge your ongoing mile per kilowatt hour energy consumption. Finally, the instrument binnacle screen shows your driving range in both EV and HV or hybrid drive. Talking of electric driving range, if you've opted for a plug-in NX, it's worth pointing out that this 450h Plus model's official WLTP-rated EV distance figure is easier to get close to than is the case with the readings quoted by rival models. We ran a Volvo XC60 Recharge plug-in model for a year and never got anywhere close to its stated electric driving range figure. Unlike this Lexus, which has recorded an EV mileage range in the early 40s during this test, and in certain circumstances might even do even better. The engineers claim that it could travel up to 61 miles in urban driving conditions with the EV mode activated. And there's a reason for this range accuracy, well, two actually. First, with PHEV rivals to this car, when battery charge is depleted, they immediately revert to conventional combustion engine power. With the NX 450 Plus, the default is to a much more efficient self-charging hybrid system, which is why, as the official figures suggest, competitor models' fuel consumption is on average around 30% higher than an NX 450h Plus when the battery is depleted. Rival models also often produce inferior EV range readings in colder conditions. With this NX, that's alleviated by the incorporation of an energy-saving heat pump, which draws thermal energy from the air outside the car to heat the cabin, which means less impact on the car's EV driving capability. All the technology in play here might make you worry about this Lexus model's reliability in either of its forms, but the Prius-derived engineering scores very highly in almost every customer satisfaction survey going, which is thanks to some very careful engineering. Take, for instance, the way that the hybrid system operates an automatic warm-up phase to help protect the petrol engine against the excessive wear that might occur if it was called upon to make regular cold starts, then run almost immediately at motorway speeds. To guard against potential issues here, power is initially slightly limited on really cold mornings, then progressively increased. If you've stretched up to this NX 450h Plus plug-in model, you'll want to know about charging it. Well, you can actually refresh the battery while you're driving the car. There's a provided battery charging mode for that. Press and hold this button on the console between the seats, but we wouldn't suggest that you regularly use it because that mode really isn't very efficient. Better to plug in what is actually quite a large battery for a PHEV, 18.1 kilowatt hours in size, containing 96 cells with a rated voltage of 355.2 volts. Its charging times are aided by a gutsy 6.6 kilowatt onboard charger, which is why it takes only 2.5 hours to replenish those cells from a conventional 7.4 kilowatt garage wall box using a 230 volt 32 amp connection. Connect up to a feebler power source like a domestic plug and you're looking at replenishment in 8 hours and 15 minutes. So still comfortably achievable overnight if, say, you happen to be away at a hotel or staying over with friends. You can set charging times using the car's centre screen or by using the provided Lexus Link app. Via this app, you can also defrost the windows and either preheat or pre-cool the cabin before you reach the car, so you won't have to spend climate system energy doing so once you're underway. The Lexus Link app additionally allows NX 450h Plus owners to check battery charge and driving range and find public charging stations in the Lexus charging network. There are almost 160,000 of them across Europe, with around 30,000 of those in the UK. On to after-sales cover. Now, it's worth pointing out that Lexus gives you a much better warranty than the limited 3-year one you'll get with most premium rivals. From the showroom, the car comes with a 3-year warranty, but providing you continue to regularly maintain it at one of the brand's franchised dealerships, 12 months of extra warranty cover will be included with every scheduled service, up to 100,000 miles or 10 years, whichever comes first. Servicing intervals are rather frequent though, every year or 10,000 miles, whichever comes first. Fixed price servicing plans are available if you want to spread the cost of maintenance, allowing you to spread the cost over 2 years or more. However you go about paying for maintenance, it shouldn't cost you too much. The hybrid setup has a good record for minimising tyre wear and its battery will last the life of the car. Plus, the regenerative braking setup helps extend the life of the brake pads over 60,000 miles of driving. The front pads should only need replacing once, while the rear pads and all discs will probably last the full distance. What else might you need to know? Well, what about vehicle excise duty? Well, the front-driven NX 350h falls into VED Band G, which means year one road tax at £170. For the NX 450h Plus plug-in, it's VED Band B, so you won't pay any road tax in the first year at all. Lexus residual values are usually strong and this car's no exception. After 3 years and 36,000 miles, independent experts reckon that this NX will hold on to around 52% of its original list price. They predict that could rise to 54% for the popular NX Premium Pack models. This top Takumi spec variant won't do quite as well as that, but the experts still quote a very competitive retained value after the same period for this test car of £30,400, which is pretty good by class standards. As to what those class standards are, well, the residual values we've given you are about the same as a rival BMW X3 and a little better than an Audi Q5, which tends to hold on to around 50% of its value over the same period. Let's finish with a look at insurance groupings. The front-driven 350h with NX trim is rated at Group 31E. For the all-wheel drive with NX trim, it's Group 32E. An NX 350h with F-Sport trim is Group 35E. And an NX 350h with top Takumi spec is Group 36E. To give you some class perspective on that, a rival mild hybrid Audi Q5 45 TF SI S-Line is rated at Group 38E. For this NX 450h Plus plug-in, it's Group 38E with NX trim, Group 40E with F-Sport trim, and Group 41E with Takumi trim.
Lexus needs the NX and it needs it to do well. For that to happen, this car has to offer more than the traditional attributes that spring to mind when you think of this brand. Things like reliability, quality, refinement and technology, and great dealer backup. Of course, the company's proud of the reputation it's built upon these virtues, but it's well aware that for this model to succeed against well-established rivals like those from BMW, Mercedes, Audi, Jaguar and Volvo, worthiness isn't enough. Lexus needs desirability, it needs design flair, it needs excitement, it needs an X factor. Take a close look at this enhanced NX with its Vital by Tech themed enhancements, and increasingly you find yourself agreeing that this is just what's on offer here. That might not necessarily mean you'll want one. It's obviously not intended to suit family-minded driving enthusiasts, and the NX may still be a little too individual to sell in the kind of numbers its maker would like. But then that's all part of its appeal. For us, it feels special and different, just like a Lexus should. If you fit that buying demographic, then you'll probably like the right version of this car very much. But what is the right version to choose? The easy answer is this 450h Plus plug-in model with its impressive tax-beating combination of speed and frugality. But there's quite a price to pay for that, which is why for many, the more affordable self-charging 350h variant will be a better choice, and a more unique one, offering frugal full hybrid technology. For the same money, rivals will charge for much less effective mild hybrid tech. Yes, accelerating hard with this Lexus, there's still the issue of the way that the auto gearbox flares loudly without much extra forward motion when you really need to get a move on. But if you're driving the car hard enough to regularly notice that, then we'd suggest that an NX was the wrong choice anyway. Not because it's a dynamic duffer. The Lexus driving signature enhancements to this second generation model have significantly improved the NX in that regard. But because this, predictably, is a car that's more about lowering the heartbeat than raising it. It's not perfect, but it's never boring. And in a market sector that's getting just that little bit stale, it's a breath of fresh air.